We now call this meeting to order. If we could please pay attention to Councilmember Cohen for the, Lesser for the invocation, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able and pay attention to the council member.
Due to the weather conditions, the gentleman who I had to say the blessing tonight was not able to make it, so I'm just going to wing it here.
Wonderful.
Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come together to discuss the business of the city. We thank you for the constituents, and we thank you for the opportunity we have as a governing body to serve them. We ask that you watch over our citizens as the weather approaches. In your name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We now proceed with the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla,
Here.
Council Members Hiller,
Here.
Clear,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Padilla,
Here.
Jensen,
Present.
Mays,
Here.
Cohen,
Here.
and Lesser.
Here.
Before we move on to the appointments and consider the rest of the agenda, we do have, I want to recognize Councilmember Lesser for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I would like to make a motion due to the weather conditions that I move that to defer agenda items 4C, 4D, 5A, and 5B to the March 5th, 2019 governing body meeting.
Councilman Jensen.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have discussions or questions with regards to this issue? Councilwoman Clear.
Can you repeat that? It's C, D, and A?
C, I'm
A
sorry.
and B.
C, D, and 5A and 5B.
Councilmember Cohen.
I'd like to ask why we're doing that tonight.
With the approaching weather conditions, I felt it would be prudent to allow the safety of the staff and other participants to make it home before the weather approached.
Okay. Councilwoman Hiller.
Just a question, I see that your motion was only for 4C and D and 5A and B, so your thought was to leave the announcements and the public comment on, or did you really mean to get rid?
That's correct.
Do the whole, yes, leave those
Yes.
items?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
I'd like to thank my colleague for thinking about our safety. So the people that are already signed up, do they need to re-sign up, or are we going to just leave it so the next time we have it? Are we going to put this on, is this going to be scheduled for our next week's? Everything will cover over, so I just want to make sure we let the public know, or let the people who are here to speak on those items, and so they will not be able to speak, and I wanted to make that clear if it hasn't already been.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. For those of you that are at home, the discussion right now is that the individuals who are signed up to speak currently for the items that we are deferring are able to pass through for next meeting, just as they are in the order that they appear. Councilwoman Clear.
Is there a reason they couldn't go ahead and speak while they're here, and then we just do the item next week?
Typically, the discussion is tied to the action item. Therefore, it would be just a bit inappropriate if we're not going to have the discussion to weigh in on what the council members are going to be deciding upon.
Then I would suggest leaving B on there. I think it affects a whole lot of people that are here.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
I'll make a motion to pull B separate for a vote.
So you're making a motion to amend the initial motion to that includes B in the agenda. Is that? 5B.
Five.
Good
5B.
with 5B to stay on, and only defer 4D and 5A, correct?
And C. C, D, and A.
Oh, okay, go over to, okay.
If we could recognize the city clerk.
Ms. Ortiz, did you want to vote separately on 5B or just pull it out?
I will just pull it out. Thank you for that. You know what I want to do.
Okay, so we have a friendly amendment to the original agenda. Do we have a second for that friendly amendment? We have a second. So at this point in time, we would be voting on the amendment to change the original motion to include the item 5B in the agenda that we will discuss today. At this point in time, if there's no further discussion, we will proceed with the voting.
Okay, we have 8 yes, Hiller and Jensen voting no.
Okay, 8 having voting yes, the motion passes. So now we have in front of us the full amended motion of deferring the action items. And at this point in time, the action items deferred are 4C, 4D, and 5A. So we had a motion and we had a second. Seeing that there's no discussion, we proceed with voting.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Okay, we have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes and the agenda is amended.
I voted yes,
Okay, so we have 10 yes.
so I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Okay, so we now move on with appointments, if the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Paul Miller to the Board of Plumbing Examiners for a term ending December 31, 2020. B is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Donna Ray Pearson to the Topeka Landmarks Commission for a term ending December 31, 2021. And C is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of David Height to the Topeka Landmarks Commission for an expired term ending December 31, 2021.
We have heard the agenda. What is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval by Councilwoman Ortiz. We have a second by Councilmember Mays. Do we have any discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's proceed with voting. The mayor does not vote.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. I think that the only person that showed up today is Ms. Ray, Donna Ray. If you could please rise so that we could recognize you. Thank you so much for your selfless service to our community. We appreciate. If Paul could also stand, I'm so sorry. Okay, we now move on to number 3. If the clerk would read the consent agenda.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the Tap That Topeka. And B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of December 1 through December 28, 2018, and enumerating said expenditures therein. C are minutes of the regular meeting of February 12, 2019, and there are no applications.
We have heard the consent agenda. What is the pleasure of the body? Councilman Emerson moves approval. We have a second by Councilmember Jensen. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now enter the action items of the agenda. First item is item A, if the clerk would read.
A is a final plat for Sherwood Village subdivision on property in which the center line of the tract is generally located 1,300 feet south of Southwest 21st Street and 650 feet west of Southwest Indian Hills Road, lying contiguous to the corporate limits of the city of Topeka, Kansas, and aligns with Southwest 24th Terrace on its east side.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. On January 15th, this was a discussion item that was brought before the governing body. At that meeting, there were some questions and concerns, some comments from individuals. A second neighborhood information meeting was held. Some notes from that are included, but at this time, I'd like, and you can review those. And at this time, though, I ask Director Finder to come forward and make some additional comments regarding this particular agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, governing body. As was mentioned, we held a really what amounted to a second neighborhood information meeting back on January 29th at your encouragement. That was coordinated to bring the developer and the concerned citizens together of Sherwood Park. We had staff and the city represented there. Councilmember Cohen was there, city manager, myself, Jason Peak and his team, Braxton Copley from utilities, and Mary Feeney from legal. Developer had his team, his engineering team there, as well as himself, and then I think there were about 9 citizens that had signed up and attended the meeting. You have a summary of this in your packet. There were 5 key items that the developer led the discussion on. 3 of those items, really what I would call, and what we ended up discussing, were regulatory type items that the city requires, connectivity to adjacent neighborhoods, meeting minimum lot sizes and compatibility and density with adjacent neighborhoods, and then stormwater as well, stormwater management that and quality and quantity reports that were approved. So we walked through those sort of all the boxes that were checked by the developer and their plat application that went to the planning commission, but those were further explained with the group there that night. The 2 other key issues were Indian Hills Road and that improvement. Since then, I believe we have been able to put that into the long-term CIP that you're going to be reviewing or are reviewing in years 6 through 10. So there's a placeholder for an Indian Hills Road project there. There are still some overlapping jurisdiction questions that need to be solved, but we just wanted to get it into the planning process so those discussions can take place and come to fruition with the project. And then the 5th issue was talked about property values. That's really something the developer kind of led that discussion on more. It's not, obviously, it's a requirement of the city. So, but it was a concern of the citizens that he was able to address with the restrictions and the types of homes that he's looking to have there. So that basically, like I said, you have that in your packet as some more detail. Planning Commission, as a reminder, has approved the plat, and it is before you for acceptance for dedication. So I'll stand for any questions if you have any at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Finder. Do we have any questions for Mr. Finder right now? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one, and that is, who got invited to the meeting? How did the invitations get issued?
Councilwoman Hiller, so the invitations went out to people who have corresponded with the city council, either through the office, city council office, or that came to the meeting and testified that night. So we had their email, and that's how they were invited.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Before we go any further with the discussion, one of the things that we do is typically listen to the concerns of the constituents before we engage in discussion. So at this point in time, if the council is amenable to this, I would like to start calling the individuals that signed up to speak tonight. Absolutely. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. Bill, I know that there was some confusion between the builder and the people. Did they get anything resolved, or did they talk about any differences?
Councilwoman Ortiz, there was a lot of information shared that night. It was a couple-hour meeting. I don't think anybody went away thinking they didn't get their share or their fair share of questions asked and answered. There was quite a bit of back and forth with the developer and the citizens as to whether there was any resolution on citizen side. I can't speak to that. Certainly the developer is coming forth with the same proposal that was, I think he came to the planning commission with, so no changes in effect there, but there was definitely a better understanding of what we all needed to know that night in terms of the development. So it was good to have that back and forth.
Thank you, and thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Thank you. We now proceed with the first person signed up to speak. That would be Bill Rowland. Bill Rowland?
Members, my name is Bill Rowland. I am the developer of this little piece of property. I've done, well, you got an email from me for all of Sherwood Park and Miller's Glen, Miller's Reserve, and now this little piece of Sherwood Village. I really don't know what I can address except their concerns were taken care of by Bill, except for the values. They were considered. Someone has conjured up the idea that we were building $150,000 homes there. I wished I could do that, but that's an impossibility in today's market. It just can't be done. The homes are going to reflect more to look like Miller's Glen homes than Sherwood Park homes because they're just built differently. And I don't know what else I can do to explain that. I mean, it's just, we've met all the regulations required by the city. I have, somewhere in my brain, it tells me we've done 367 home sites in that area over the last 25 years. And I've got another 117 to go, which I won't make it through that, I don't think. But anyhow, I would be a fool to build something that it wasn't reflective of the community and the neighboring homes. So that's all I can really say. I don't know if you've ever been to Miller's Glen, but that's what Miller's Glen looks like, and it's pretty darn good looking. So you'll have an HOA. It'll be governed by the HOA, and I'll answer any questions you got for me.
Councilman Cohen.
I have some. Thank you, Mayor. The size of the property, I think the concern was that if they built on the minimum requirements by the city on those lots, that the homes could be a $150,000 home. How do we rest assured that, you know, those living along the boundary and those that live there in Sherwood Park, that this development is not going to devalue their property values by building cheap homes?
I don't know how to give you that answer. I mean, without, what I need to do, bring a set of plans in for houses and then cost estimates of what they're going to be. It's impossible to do that. Unless you'd let me put mobile homes on there, I don't think you'd do that. But the point is that they'll all be 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 square foot homes. You know, you can do the math. It costs $150 a square foot to build a house at least. So I project that most of these homes will be somewhere in the 275 to 350 range. That's all I can do. You know. Now, I will tell you, in some subdivisions, there's a lot more, there's different kinds of controls. In this subdivision, a homeowner would be able to buy the lot and hire their own builder and build it. So that's why we have covenants and restrictions. It lays out how big it can be, how little it can be. It lays out if it can be a 2 stories or single story. It tells you where you can't put your car and where you can put your car. And lights, the way the street lights work. I mean, it's covenants and restrictions, and that's how every subdivision is controlled. I don't know if that's your answer, but.
Okay. Well, I was at the meeting too, and there was some conversation about, you know, the certain things were promised for Sherwood Park, like neat little street lights and things like that lined the road and that were never built, and that just kind of brought up just the concern for them that, is what we're talking about here really going to happen the way that we're talking about it here?
Well, there were a lot of things said in that meeting that just weren't true. There were a lot of people claiming facts that just weren't true. So if you read the restrictions of Sherwood Park, which I have many times, there were not streetlights in Sherwood Park. The city didn't put them in.
Gotcha.
And we didn't do that in that subdivision,
Gotcha.
if that's what you're referring to. But I learned a lesson from that. Now I require the builders to put them in.
Councilman Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, I had received an email from somebody saying that they were concerned that you would be putting duplexes in. Can you maybe put their minds at ease a little bit, or?
Yeah, pretty easily. It's not zoned for duplexes.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions for Mr. Rowland? Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. I just have a quick comment. I want to thank you for coming here this evening, and thank you for taking the time to sit down with the constituents in that area and work with them to try and reach a resolution. I think that's very amicable, and I appreciate you investing the time to do so.
Well, thanks. I mean, I would have done it sooner. I just didn't realize there was an issue.
Seeing no further questions, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Mr. James Unger.
Good evening, nice to see you all again. James Unger, 2504 Southwest Wexford Drive. Again, just in the discussion that was had, I won't use my time talking about that, but, some things that were brought up during that meeting, and pointing you back to the Land Use and Growth and Development Plan for 2040 Topeka. It does talk about in low density or urban developments, that infill developments, they're encouraged in these areas, and the planning staff did cite this as essentially an infill development. And that these infill developments should fit into the overall character and pattern of the area and comply with adopted neighborhood plans. There's been talk about how Sherwood Park was planned to extend and how this is essentially just an extension of Sherwood Park. The lots as they are planned, they don't comply with Sherwood Park. They're not similar to Sherwood Park in size or layout. They talk about, the density of Sherwood Park. First, it was the planning staff talked about how Sherwood Park was 2 to 2.5. Well, then they came back with different information that the street it was connecting to was 2.9. So there's just been a lot of testimony that's kind of went back and forth as this whole thing has gone along. So, we feel like this wasn't necessarily well planned out from the get-go, and there's still a lot of questions left unanswered. The density of saying even along that street 2.9, 2/3 of those lots would equate to 4.25 on the Sherwood Village plat. And so again, that's greater than the one dwelling unit density that they talk about in their acceptable range. Now, the only reason it does meet that 3.6 that they cite is simply because those corner lots, due to easements and setbacks, they're just bigger lots because of those easements and setbacks. That doesn't mean you can build a bigger building on there, or that it is similar in nature to those of Sherwood Park. They talk about the depth of Sherwood Park being 130 foot, and that's not true. On my side of the street, the depth of all the lots is 150 foot. Another thing, again, that through this whole process that was discussed quite a bit is adding Indian Hills to the CIP, and it sounds like it's in the process of getting done. A lot of the concerns that were raised then was unless something was in the first 3 years of the CIP is the way I understood it, there's no guarantee that project can get done. In fact, it was even mentioned by the planning staff that if it's in that 6 to 10 year window, it can be taken off at any time due to budget concerns and things of that nature. The planning commission said as part of the annexation, which again, I know we're talking about the plat here, but they kind of go hand in hand. One of their contingencies was that, with this property being annexed, that the Southwest Indian Hills Road, be added to the CIP. But again, that leaves a lot of questions unanswered in that regard. Really with that's all I have. If you have any questions for me.
Seeing no questions, thank you for your comments.
And I do want to make note that it was grand of Mr. Rowland to come and speak with us. I do think there was some benefits to that meeting overall, so I do want to make note of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak is Gary Smith.
Gary Smith. I thank you for the opportunity to come back and speak tonight. I would like my comments to be applicable to 4A as well as 4B. I don't want to repeat it necessarily tonight, but I'm glad to do that if you want me to. I'm here to ask that there be a delayed action on the annexation 4A and 4B. I prefer that there be a negative action, but I would prefer that it be delayed until this thing can be thought out further and discussed a little further. We talked last time, I think, the gentleman over here, Councilman asked me about covenants, and covenants are important, and I think if this is something that ultimately goes forward, the covenants become very critical, and how those are written and how they're enforced and how they're carried out are going to be critical to any kind of development, in my opinion. I have talked to a realtor to get their opinion on what's going on here, and I'm going to share some of those comments in just a second. But I also did attend the January 15th session here. I attended the January 29th session out on 29th Street for Sherwood Park. It was limited to those that had, I think, emails submitted. It was not open to the whole community, as my understanding. There was a limited amount of people that could attend, invited to attend. Subsequent to that, I did talk to a realtor. From both these meetings, I think I heard nothing that really diminished my concerns. My concerns, I guess, primarily was in terms of potentially devaluing the value of the properties in Sherwood Park. At this point, I think there's very little definitive information on what's going to be built on those lots. There's been dialogue that evening, and there was some dialogue by Mr. Rowland tonight, and I had a conversation with him before the meeting, and I appreciate that dialogue. That evening, I heard that the home sizes were going to be 1,450 square feet. That's about what they were. And I heard tonight they're 1,500 to 1,700 square feet, whatever they are. They may be on slabs with basement and no basements. The price would be in the area of $250,000. And they reaffirmed tonight he intended to sell the lots to others to build on. It sounds like they'll not be building by himself. So we at the mercy of what a purchaser buys a lot for and what they want to put on it, and how do you limit what that person puts on that piece of property. If it meets the single-family dwelling, I don't know what at this point in time will limit him putting on a 1,008 square foot home with no garage or a 2,200 square foot home. I understand they intend to have an HOA, but they would not enjoy the access or participation to the community building at Miller's Glen. We know an HOA is made up of homeowners, a not-for-profit type, and their powers are limited what they're willing to take on, and no stronger than what the HOA will be made up of, and that's about 33 landowners, so it's not very many people to pick from to establish an HOA. I did learn, and heard here tonight by the speaker preceding me, that the code requiring infill, the definition, as I wrote it down, and even I looked at he shared his paper, it's something to the extent it must be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and must be compatible with surrounding neighborhoods. I think the interpretation of that is open to some discussion and some conflicts and some differences of opinion in terms of what we think we know how it's going to go into this development. But again, the very little definitive information as far as what kind of home is going to go into, other than it's a single-family dwelling. I feel that there's some subjectivity there, and I think the projects that do not meet that, especially since so few details are known with the homes that are being built, that there leaves a lot of question. A lengthy discussion did take place on the 29th. As I listen here tonight, I'm going to add in a few comments, but some of the things that were not done, I sit next to a lady that had quite a litany of, I was not there when it started, but I know there's such things as the way the rock,
Sir, your time has expired.
You
Would you
need
like
more
to
time.
request an extension?
yes, if I could, please.
A minute, 2 minutes?
2 minutes max.
2 minutes?
It'll probably
I'll
take that
extend
long.
2 minutes.
So,
We have a motion for extension of 2 minutes by Councilmember Cohen. We have a second by Councilmember Emerson. All those in favor, please vote. Please vote. And those who are not in favor, too.
We have 8 yes.
In having voting yes, the motion passes. Sir, you have 2 minutes.
thank you, I'll speak quickly here. I did talk to a Realtor about the situation and asked him if I was overlooking something or if I had concerns that were unfounded. And what he shared, he says, based on information that he could find and what I shared with him, there are a lot of unknowns on the properties that will go into this particular tract. Uncertainties as to cost, size, value, quality of construction, interior, exterior, and finish work. If something that is built that does not sell well, what will happen to the value of that property or others like it? What will happen to the sale of the other lots, and who will build on them, and what will be the, and who will be on hook for the infrastructure cost? He mentioned that certainly the city would have an interest in knowing who's going to pay for the infrastructure should they not develop. Someone has to pay for that. As I said previously, whoops. He pointed out that I think the covenants can dictate price and that they need to be strong and enforceable. He mentioned that in Kansas City there are some good covenants that has been very helpful in setting price, but most of those are very good covenants.
You have a minute.
Building a 2-bedroom, 1 slab, 60-plus square foot lot at $250,000, divided, that's about $173 per square foot. That's a lot of cost per square foot on a house in Topeka. Maybe not in Kansas City, but it is in Topeka. It's easier to do the right thing up front than to try to undo a not-so-good decision, and that's what I'm asking you to do. And I'm asking all of you, I'll ask you specifically here to vote no on this issue at this point in time. That's not no forever, but for this point in time. Had I known I needed to do that, I'd have sent an email to each and every one of you, so I'm making that plea right now. I don't think we're opposed to development area. I just think we're opposed to development that we know so very few specifics about, that we have concerns about what it's going to affect our properties. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but uncertainties lead to a lot of discomfort. On there.
Thank you for your comments. Next person signed up to speak is Rick Schmidt.
Mr. Mayor and council persons, Rick Schmidt with Schmidt, Beck and Boyd Engineering, representing Mr. Rowland. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think we kind of discussed everything the last meeting, and we did represent Mr. Rowland at the neighborhood meeting. I guess the only thing I have to add is just a reminder that, we have met all the city's guidelines on this, all the requirements. We meet the land use growth management plan. I don't know what else we could do. There is no guarantees as to what kind of house they're going to be built on there. There's no guarantees in any subdivision we do in this city of what houses there's going to be built on there. Mr. Rowland is a reputable developer. You got to trust him on this. He's done a lot of developments and he's not done. So that's really all I have to add. If you have any questions I can answer. Okay.
Seeing none, thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Claude Belchy.
My name's Claude Belchy. I live in downtown Topeka. I'd like to speak on 2 things tonight. One is I seen that Brent Trout is looking for someone to basically be a go-between him and the chief of police or of the police department.
Sir, I am so sorry. I saw your name and I called you as speaking to this item at this point in time.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I am sorry. I called because I just saw you next. I apologize. We will call you at the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brian Fox. Yeah, I missed it.
Good evening, Brian Fox. I live at 2511 Southwest Wexford Drive. Thanks for letting me speak again to you tonight. Couple quick points I want to make. I'll kind of talk about things I've learned about this process, going through it. Throughout the meetings, the informational meetings, the Planning Commission meeting, I never really felt like we were heard, we were probably listened to. I guess I should have taken the informational meetings at face value, and that was just that. Here's the information of what we're going to do. Ask some questions. Thank you, it's over. There was really never ever a discussion of maybe changing, maybe doing something different, maybe looking at it a different way. Throughout that, I just felt like, the first time that we maybe were really heard was at the last council meeting. So thank you for that. One new word I learned throughout all this is connectivity, and that word has been said many times throughout this process about the need for connectivity in neighborhoods. And I'm not privy to, I don't have a background in city planning, so I don't know about it, but I do know that the subdivision directly to the north of this does not connect to anything. Connects to no other subdivisions. There's one way in and one way out, and always will be. So I need to do some more research on that word. Maybe throughout this I'll learn some more about that, but that's one thing I just want to bring up, that when that was used as an argument or a point of talking about Sherwood Village, that the subdivision directly to the north does not connect to anything. The last thing I want to talk about was Indian Hills Road. That's always been my go-to, and has been for a couple of years, trying to get some traction through my city councilman and county commissioners. So I appreciate that it's made the CIP, the long-term CIP. I will continue to track it, and I will be a voice throughout that process also, and I hope to learn about that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Michelle Fox.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting us talk. I really don't have much to add after all those guys have spoken. All I wanted to say was thanks for having the meeting with the developer. I thought that was great. The only downside to that was only people who had commented in the past were invited to attend. So that was kind of disappointing. I think a lot of neighbors might have come, but they weren't really given that option. But it was good nonetheless. All I can really ask at this point is you vote no. I think Mr. Rowland's a great guy, and he's done a great job with his developments. Just living next door, if I had a preference, it wouldn't go through, but that's just my personal opinion. I guess I would almost rather see him finish the current subdivision that he's working on before jumping into this one. Miller's Reserve, I believe, had 2 parts. And that first part is getting finished. Some houses have been sold and things like that, but the second part hasn't even started yet. So there's my 2 cents for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have heard from our speakers, and we have heard from our presenters. Is there further discussion for Mr. Fyander? Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. Mr. Fyander, if you'd like to come up and address some of those points where there was some ambiguity in the density of properties per subdivision, I would appreciate that. For one thing, I'm curious as to why there's ambiguity in this at all. I thought we had a pretty tight standard here.
Well, all I can say is that from our standpoint, we have a set of regulations that requires block lengths and connectivity, and either do it or you don't. So I'm not sure myself what is, in terms of this proposal, that there is any other solution for this proposal. This was the connection that was to be planned. This creates in fact, if we didn't connect, we would require a third less lots here. And so the proposal and the development just doesn't, it doesn't check our boxes if it does that. Just much like a building code.
Well,
have a
building codes
subdivision-
are
we have
usually
a
fairly
subdivision-
stringent, and there seems to be some interpretation that it's too big or it's too little in some cases. I'm curious, is it just intentionally that flexible, or is there some misinterpretation? How are we getting numbers all over the place here?
So the lot sizes are another issue, the density. Lot sizes, there's a minimum lot size. They've checked that box. Then we get to the next part of the regulations that require compatibility with adjacent subdivisions. And so the connection here is that the block it's connecting to has so there's two things. The block it's connecting to has half a unit to 0.6 unit difference in density ranges. The block it's connecting to, the footprints that are on that block would fit in the new proposed lot. So that's how we make that judgment.
So where's the ambiguity in the units per block then? Because the speakers have come up and said they've arrived at a different set of numbers than you all have. I'm just curious if there's any understanding as to how that was arrived at.
The numbers are, you can play around with numbers, you can look at the entire neighborhood, you can look at just the lots without the right-of-way. And I think that's where we need to be comparing apples to apples. The numbers for the entire neighborhood, maybe, and I say the neighborhood, entire Sherwood Park development would be different than if you just look at the block that are it's being connected to. So that's part of it. You could also just pair off the lots in Sherwood Village that are a certain size and say that's the density without factoring in the right-of-way or the average of all the lots. So typically, we draw a line around the block. The block is both faces on either side of the street and with the right-of-way, and that's how we, as a professionally determine density. And then that's what we did for the two blocks, the proposed block, and the block it's connecting to. Actually, the other block it's connecting to. There's two blocks it's connecting to. And that's where we came up with our measurement.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Feinender, we deny permits for porches and stuff because it doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. And I'm just curious why we just didn't say, these lots need to match the character of the neighborhood in Sherwood Village when the initial discussions happened.
The lots in our judgment actually do match. There is a range, again, of density that we're talking about. The depths are the same. The footprints of homes that are in the adjacent neighborhood would fit these proposed lots. So it's a different market that this developer is catering to. It's a smaller household, less maintenance of a yard. So that stands to reason. You would have some smaller lots in there, but we are, believe me, we do have some concern if lots got too small. We don't believe these got too small. In fact, I think he came to us initially with smaller lots, and we said, no, you need to increase those.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bill, why wasn't everybody invited to the meeting?
And Councilwoman Ortiz, the people that had made contact with your office and testified here, that's who we had emails for. So to get a meeting together in the time that we need to get it and have Mr. Rowland come from Florida and have a discussion as opposed to a large venue and a lot of people that sitting down at a table across from one another. That was really, we talked to the developer how they wanted to do that, and we agreed we would invite the people that showed the concerns because we had their contacts, and we could have a smaller, more constructive outcome.
I guess I'm just disappointed in when usually we have so many yards and, feet and whatever, and we invite all those people, and I guess I was just a little bit disappointed that we didn't do that. Because you know, a lot of people, maybe they couldn't come out, or maybe, you know, I mean, they're all in that area, though.
All I can say is we did that. We did that the first time, and so everyone had a chance to come out, and anybody who signed up along the way, basically, we went back and contacted. There were several people that weren't adjacent to our notification area that came as well.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further comments, what is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval by Councilwoman Clear. We have a second by Councilman Emerson. Additional discussion? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
Mr. Lester
Sorry.
and Jensen.
Nope. Where's he again?
Okay, we have 7 yes, Ortiz, Padilla, and Cohen voting no. So it passes.
7 having voted yes, it passes. We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout annexing land to the City of Topeka, Kansas in accordance with KSA 12520, located at 2400 Southwest Indian Hills Road within unincorporated Shawnee County, Kansas, and adjacent to the City of Topeka corporate limits, and said land being annexed for all city purposes.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Most of the items that would relate to this have already been discussed, given the discussion that we had on 4A. So at this time, I have nothing further to add unless Mr. Finder does. No, not at this time.
Seeing none, we do have 2 individuals signed up to speak. The first one is James Unger.
Yeah, I'll be quick, because again, this just has to do with the annexation. First, I just wanted to clarify on the plat density. I did calculate to the middle of the road, so I was taking that into account as far as how I was getting that density. As far as the annexation itself, you know, again, the Planning Commission did recommend that it be added to the 10-year CIP, and while it's been discussed to be added, it has not yet been added. There's been a lot of discussion, I believe, even in the governing body here, as well as the neighborhood informational meeting, that there are a lot of details as far as adding it to the CIP and actually making those improvements due to overlapping jurisdictions between the county, between the township, between the city. And until all of that is actually lined out or sorted out, I don't even understand how it can be truly added to a CIP for improvements until you make that. Maybe I just don't understand that correctly, but I feel that that's a very big concern with a lot of cloudiness to it there. Again, the other thing I'd like to remind, based on what I learned from part of the city's planning department and employees, is that if it's not within those 3 years on that CIP, again, there's no guarantee it's ever going to get done. That, you know, as it gets moved around and it's in that distance, 6 to 7 to 10 year range, it can simply be taken off at the governing body's decision and nothing ever gets done. And that is something they did say could happen. They did not say it will happen. But again, it just raises additional concerns as far as when this is going to happen, if it's going to happen. And again, the Planning Commission did make this a stipulation as far as, you know, the annexation. So that's all I have.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak on this item is Gary Smith.
As I said earlier, I don't really have anything to add. I'll let my other testimony speak for itself. But I would ask the question, I'm befuddled, how are we to assure ourselves, or what are the provisions are within the city government, that something will be built that is comparable to what's in that community, other than something that may be far from that could be very detrimental to value of properties? I've heard nothing and know nothing at the present time that can avoid us. It's all on the honor system. If it is, I would be disappointed that's all that we have in the city or any form of government to protect the interests of the other property owners. Probably more of a question to you because I don't have the answer to it. So, whatever you do, I hope you will take that into consideration, where we go forward from here. That, we're homeowners, we want to live in Topeka, we advertise for Topeka. When I moved here, I heard some things about how things were done in the city, how things weren't necessarily always done to benefit the homeowner. And I don't think a community wants a reputation of not being protective of their own citizens and protecting their property. And as I said previously, a home is probably the single largest ownership investment of most families. Maybe not all of you, not all of us, but it is a major investment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have no further public comment at this time. Councilman Cohen?
Move to approve.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? Councilwoman Clear seconds. Discussion? Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take a moment to give a shout out to both parties, if you will, in the audience. I grew up in an area like you're talking about with subdivisions that started out as farm fields and then one popped up and then another and another. And what's happening right now is really pretty natural with that kind of development, in that when somebody's building in a field and nothing's nearby, nobody has anything to say. They're glad they're either for the development or not, but then it begins to build. And it's when you get to the time like this, when everybody's there, that people get a little more worried about that infill. You know, overall, sometimes people want us to be God or something and kind of take care of everything. We're not. You know, the government puts together the rules to protect the general. We balance the rights of one party and the rights of another. For all of us, we fought and died for the freedom to have commerce and to develop and have business, and yet there's always that push-pull of, well, what's going to happen and how's it going to affect me? I just want to give you both great credit, Mr. Rowland, for coming in. Perhaps in the past, the neighbors didn't speak up or didn't ask, and he wasn't used to that. And so it's good that you all had to get together, and I hope that Mr. Rowland will continue keeping in touch with you. We learned when the first hearing occurred on this matter, and you all came here, that you had a homeowners association, but somehow it wasn't contacted, and it as an association didn't kind of speak up. I encourage you to continue keeping that homeownership association strong, talking about what you want, both in terms of Indian Hills Road as well as the neighborhood, staying in touch with Mr. Rowland. It sounds like he has an idea what those covenants will say. Generally, when these subdivisions develop, if the associations keep a friendly relationship and keep that communication going, those kinds of things work out, and I certainly hope that they will in this case. I can assure you, at least from most experience, that if there's a custom house in the middle, it generally makes the subdivision a little more interesting and works out okay. I did grow up in in an area where there were subdivisions all along, and that road is still a 2-lane road. Make sure at least that it's paved well and that it's safe, and stay on it. Help those different units of government that all have some piece of ownership of that road at this point to figure out how to work together and get it fixed to whatever can be done in that area. That'll include us now with the annexation, but it really can be done, and it can be done between you. We can't solve all those problems, and nobody really wants government to do that, actually. So we're doing the best that we can, and again, appreciate all of you, because it's important to speak up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so seeing no additional comments, I think that at this point in time, we have a motion and a second. We proceed by voting.
We have 9 yes, Ms. Ortiz voting no.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We are, as per our discussion earlier, moving items C and D to the March 5th agenda. We're also doing the same with the non-discussion items, item A. However, we will have discussion on item B if the clerk would read.
B is discussion regarding the City of Topeka Personnel Code relating to employee residency requirements.
City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Hiller, since she chaired the Policy and Finance Committee, and let her make the presentation. And then I'll chime in with additional information.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I chaired the Policy and Finance Committee this year. The other members of the committee were Councilman Emerson and Councilman Cohen. This particular issue came from within the committee. It was Councilman Cohen who had asked if we could consider the issue of employee residency, and the committee scheduled it for fall and duly considered it. What is before you today, we put it on just as a discussion item because this issue can be kind of controversial, and also because it did come from within the committee rather than as a council assignment, and we weren't sure even what everybody's thoughts were about it. The recommendation from the committee that is before you is our recommendation was that we recommend to the City Council that the council drop the Shawnee County residency requirement for all employees, but retain the authority to establish reporting times within job descriptions and duty assignments, along with a suggestion to review job performance expectations, perhaps adding language requiring familiarity with the city as it's appropriate for job duties. That was our recommendation, passed out unanimously to put forward to this board for consideration. We left it open then for the staff to actually put wording into how the ordinance would be changed. And you also got a brief copy of the resolution. I'll get to that in a moment. I want you to know that as we considered the issue, we covered, just to give you a little background, we covered 5 points, really. We looked at 3 options for what could be done with the residency requirement. One was to leave it the way it is now, which is to require all employees to live in Shawnee County, and also has some detail about certain duties with certain response times. We looked at the fact that we could drop the we could recommend to drop the residency requirement altogether, or that we could make the recommendation that I just shared with you, to drop it, but really look at a functionality issue of, did the job require somebody to live close enough for their job duties, and encourage that review. At the same time, we discussed affirmative hiring and diversity and inclusion as well. We talked about the fact that the city is and some of the departments in particular are working to diversify our workforce, and we didn't want dropping the residency requirement to drop initiatives for diversity. So we talked about that quite a bit, and I wanted everybody to know that. We also talked about, well, if we dropped it, were we adequately doing affirmative recruiting overall, and were we adequately promoting the city to our prospective employees? In both of those cases, and you might want to talk about it further, but the staff assured us that the affirmative recruiting would not stop, and that they were promoting the city to prospective employees. With that, the recommendation that you have before you in terms of specific language from the staff came through to drop the requirement, and it's just a 2-page item that was in your packet, to drop the requirement to live in Shawnee County, to retain the requirement that individuals who are in public safety positions, as defined by our HR department, would have to live no more than 30 minutes report time from their job station or office. It does include language to direct the department directors to review job descriptions and give them the authority to put specific report times in job descriptions where needed. So with that, we wanted to open it up for discussion from you all. Before then, though, Councilman Cohen, it was your idea. Do you have any comments that you want to make?
Yes, Councilman Cohen.
Thank you. No,
My spot here.
Councilwoman Hillard, no, that was very thorough. I do want to say that we did meet twice as a committee, and nobody showed up. So this idea was going down in flames fast. And there is a need for us to look outside of Shawnee County. I mean, Kansas City is a rich market. We have small communities around here that we can draw really talented people to Topeka to work here. So when we met the final time, which is where we did the recommendation, it seemed like the floodgates came and everybody showed up, and everybody was in support of doing this. And we're talking many of the bargaining units that are here at the city. So I just wanted to say that. I was very happy for them, or happy that they did show up. So thank you.
Thank you. If, with your permission, I wanted to offer Councilman Emerson from the committee an opportunity to
Councilman Emerson.
comment as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, thanks. I was probably the most reluctant on the committee to support this, honestly, just because, one, a lot of fire and policemen live out by me, and I like having them as neighbors, frankly, and I like having them here. They're great people. A lot of people at Shawnee Heights do that. And I was a little reluctant, frankly, that, we're doing a lot of things in the community to encourage people to live here, and I saw we were going the opposite direction, so that concerned me. However, listen to the testimony of the police chief and the fire chief and Mr. Fiander. They're having a real problem drawing people, especially some of the more specialized positions they have. So I was, in the end, I was supportive of it, but it wasn't a slam dunk in my mind. But I was supportive of it in the end.
Thank you. And just to wrap up, again, we didn't put it on as an action item because if the committee even needs to work more on it, we can, but we really thought that there needed to be some discussion amongst the council to get a sense from this full body whether you wanted to take it forward and how soon, if there was a need for more discussion. I want to thank Councilman Padilla for coming in and testifying as well. We really had some good testimony. If city manager wants to make some comments on the choices for staff recommendation.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilwoman Hiller. From my standpoint, I appreciate the due diligence that was done. This item is one that, as we looked at as staff with the positions that we recruit, it was something that we wanted to see considered. We felt like it was a good option for us and would improve our ability to recruit and also retain. We think there are individuals that maybe would consider they need to move in order to work for a dual working family, one that works west or east, and being able to have some flexibility and continue to work with us, work for us, and have that. The comment that I want to go through is, as we crafted the actual language for the resolution, for the ordinance to be approved, it includes language in there that says that the public safety personnel will continue to live no more than 30 minutes. That is a default time, and what we expect to do is to work with the directors, with both chiefs, to discuss what positions need to have that. We already have other descriptions in their positions related to if they are in a special unit, and that special unit has a specific report time. It may be even less than 30 minutes. And so for us, each position needs to have a specific designated amount of time that they would need a response. Some we believe will not have any requirement of 30 minutes, and that there isn't, based on the old scenario of an all-call and having people all show up, that there isn't a need for a 30-minute requirement. But for the interim, until we get through the process, which requires us to go through with the union contract with the Fraternal Order of Police. There's a reopener. We have to go through and negotiate through that to approve this first as a step, and then make the changes in the contracts, address the job descriptions for specific positions. Then that will go away as a common thread as far as the 30-minute requirement. More or less will be a paper comment, and that it will be reflected individually with each position that we have. And so I see that as going forward as something that would not be of a concern. And there's other things related to the bargaining units. The water AFSCME and the firefighters agreed to be bound by the governing body amendments. But that would be something that we would reopen when the contract's at the end of their terms. And they have a lot of, they very much support this, and I think this is something that they want to see, and we'll work hard to get an agreement related to that issue.
Thank you very much for your comments. Councilwoman Hiller, do you have additional remarks?
Only that if people do want, I don't know what the feelings are of people on this body. If people do want to do a deep dive into the materials that we had a substantial amount of reading material that we can get everybody connected with. I don't think that all of our minutes were attached, but we did have a fair amount of testimony and discussion, so there's probably about 15 pages of minutes that people can read or watch the videos of those hearings to get the pros and cons that were discussed, because both sides were discussed in the process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Clear.
And I did read through your minutes, and I thought all my questions that I would have asked were asked and discussed. So you guys were very thorough, and you did a good job, and I am in support of this.
Thank you. We do have individuals signed up to speak. Before we proceed with the discussion, the first individual signed up to speak is Matt Blassingame.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, governing body. I'm Matt Blassingame. I represent the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 3. I would just like to recommend that you guys consider doing away with the geographic requirement. I think that this issue is important for us as a department for recruiting, retention, and hiring issues. I think in competitiveness, I think if we look at our comparable cities out there, we have one of the most restrictive residency requirements out there. Us in Kansas City, Kansas are the only ones around in our comparable market that have a geographic residency requirement. So I'd like you to consider doing away with that, just so we can be competitive, because this is a very competitive field that we're in, and we need to make sure that we're competing for the candidates out there. Just a personal story for myself. I started the department in my mid-30s, and had I lived outside of Shawnee County, I would not be working for the Topeka Police Department right now. At that time in my life, I married, have kids, and to uproot my family to move to Shawnee County would not be something that I would have done. I would have went to work for the Shawnee County Sheriff's Department or Lawrence PD, or I would have looked for another agency that did not have that geographic requirement. So I appreciate the committee's time. And I know that there's some concerns to make sure that we're still doing what we're doing for recruiting. I think Sergeant Campos is doing an excellent job. I think that we're doing good work out there to try to get the qualified candidates, and to use analogy, I think we want to cast that same net. We just want to use a bigger net. That way that we're getting more qualified candidates to come to work for us. So.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Patrick Delap.
Hi there, Pat DeLapp. I'm against this proposal. If we open back up, I want to see it more restrictive. Narrowly, one time it was a city residence. The excuse is given. I only got 6 pages of notes that I downloaded. I didn't find the 15, Karen.
We'll send you.
All right. The excuse given in the notes I got was the fire department has difficulty finding people. I don't think so. They're well paid, they work 2 24-hour shifts, all 4 to 5 days, and they come back home. The requirement is excellent. Now, the police do have a problem. The police have a problem not getting people to sign up to want to be police officers, but passing the background check. If I understand, 30 to 40% of the candidates fail that test. That is a problem. You know, perhaps you could do something maybe not people don't like, start poaching the sheriff departments because they're paid less anyways from our people. Is this something about more? Do we have city attorneys, perhaps judges, perhaps department heads not living in the county? Maybe, I don't know. Do we have any record of the 1,200 employees we have, whether they live in the city or the county? Maybe we should get a hold of that. People in a position of power, a lot of these department head things like this, I consider them our overlords. Overlords, they should be held responsible for their decision, suffer the consequences of their bad decisions, and suffer the benefits of the good ones. If they're not living in the city, they're just hired help. They don't have the type of community stance that we do. And citizens are paying for their dollars. It's not out what the county is. The citizens are, and we should control that. The city has about 110, 115,000 people in the city. Now I know we got a census coming up soon, which will clarify that. Certainly, we can find quality people to fill these positions. I mean, this is government work. All we need is competent people. It is not rocket science. To fill them, I think we can find city employees to fill those positions. When we have companies coming to town, we pull out our wallet, offer them money. Yeah, we'll give you $75,000 tax credit per employee you hire. Hire some of our own people. Don't make them work at Labor Pro or the places like that. The officer before me did mention Kansas City, Kansas does require a city requirement for city employee. Unified government does require a county employee, county residents. Board of Public Utilities require you have to live within their service area. There is also contention that you also have, well, it might be union, something on an ethnic thing too with them. People are living out in the county. You do get more bang for your buck for new property. Part of that is our lack of an aggressive annexation, and we're starting to change that tonight. We want to. I heard talk tonight about aggressing things. If as a citizen I'm paying for the salary, you need to be part of the city business. City manager Brent, mayor, council members, you all are citizens of Topeka. You are good quality people. You're part of my community. And here we're saying we can't find good quality people to work for the city? Come on. If we hire city employees, I want them to be part of my community, allowing to let them live outside of even the county. They're not part of the community. They're just the hired help. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Matthew Bergman.
Mayor, thank you. Council, thank you for allowing me to appear. My name is Matthew Bergman. I'm a partner at Frieden Underwriting Forbes, law firm in town. I am here tonight to speak on behalf of the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 3, the IAFF Local 83, and also the local water union, Local 1294. I was very happy to participate in the subcommittee meeting, so I thank Councilwoman Hiller and Councilman Cohen and Emerson for providing that opportunity. Time is limited tonight, so I'm going to make my points brief. I would be open to any questions or any follow-up if needed. With a residency requirement like this, as a governing body, you have to weigh what the best interest is. And I think most employees believe that they should be allowed to live where they want, best suits their families, best suits their needs. Most residency requirements develop because certain governments want to bring employees within a certain geographical area, sometimes for economic purposes such as tax bases. But for tonight, I guess the first point I would make, and probably the largest detriment to having a residency requirement, is the fact that you are preventing the most qualified applicants from coming and working for the city of Topeka or in the city of Topeka. And you're establishing an imaginary line that's set through our counties and cities that may prevent someone who's overly qualified to work for us and provide the city an excellent work product. What we don't want to do as good stewards of our tax funds is limit our ability to hire qualified individuals, because qualified employees who are efficient, use their time well, are intelligent, technologically savvy, produce a better work product in a faster, more efficient manner, and that's good for everyone. Now, there are some things that I think are important when you consider this, is that, I guess, with regard to my clients and other employees, individuals are paid a salary or a wage to perform a certain duty. And as long as they're performing those duties and doing that adequately without any complication, I really don't care where they reside at. If they show up to work on time, they have good performance reviews, if they're providing a good work product for the city, I think that is everything that you want in an employee. With regard to first responders, because I represent those individuals, they provide a professional service, and all employees provide some form of service, but if there is an accident, or if my house is on fire, I'm not going to stop someone and ask them where they reside at. I want them to perform that service, rescue my family, take care of me, or do whatever is necessary to make sure that those services are provided. As long as those individuals are doing their job in a good fashion, I don't think a residency requirement should prevent them from being employed within our city. Community, that's important for everyone. Even if someone lives, let's say in Grantville, which is about 6.4 miles from here, but it's in Jefferson County, that doesn't mean they can't be involved in our community. We have people that live just across the county lines, north, south, east, west, and they still provide a significant amount of input and activity and financial support to our community. And Madam Mayor, if I need to request an extension, I would ask 1 minute.
Do we have approval, a motion? You approve 1 minute. We have a motion by Councilmember Cohen, a second by Councilman Emerson. We proceed with voting.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the motion passes. Sir, you have an additional minute.
Thank you. With regard to public policy, there can be different interests between public employers and private employers. But in Topeka, I am not aware of any private employer that has a residency requirement or geographical restriction on their employees. They want the best, the brightest that will come to work for us. I don't care if it's Advisors Excel, Security Benefit, SC2, Mars, Midwest Health. And I guess the question I would place upon you is, why would we put that restriction on the individuals that we want to work for the city? If talent can flow to the city, let it come to us. There will be other individuals who will provide comment tonight in support of our position. I thank you for your time. I would be happy to answer any questions or be involved in further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next person signed up to speak is Aaron Freeman.
Mayor, governing body, thank you for this opportunity. I'm not going to tell you anything that you guys haven't heard already. I represent the International Association of Firefighters Local 83, and we would support lifting this residency requirement for 2 reasons. One, be the same thing as the police department. We do have a recruitment issue. We held a test just today for the fire department. We had 9 individuals signed up, and 6 of those people that took the test passed. Currently, we have 11 openings. So obviously, there's a recruitment issue. We're constantly behind on hiring. We don't have enough people get through the process. Secondly is retention. Historically, the fire department has had excellent retention. We recruit people, they come work for the city of Topeka, the fire department, and they stay. That trend is changing. As we were going through the committee hearing, I was aware of individuals that were in hiring processes in surrounding communities. One of those individuals has since left. I actually had one person call me today and inform me that he is also doing the same thing. He's looking at a surrounding community. We have a lot of dual incomes families now. We have spouses that get jobs over in Kansas City, in Johnson County, and in Lawrence that pay a higher salary or that force that family to move, which hasn't always been the case, but it is now. So those are the 2 big issues that we have going on. It's no different than any other department in this city. It's not limited to public safety. This would benefit the entire city of Topeka, and I think you'd hear that from the city manager on down. So I'll answer any questions if you guys have some, or if we need to have further discussion, I'm happy to do that as well.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Joseph Ledbetter.
Evening, governing body. I'm going to try to get through this quickly. I doubt that I'll be able to, but first off, the process, I wish this had been better vetted with citizens. I just talked to a businessman today that was outraged that we would drop the county requirement, and he's invested a lot of money in this community. He says, we're over here trying to get people to live in the community under Momentum 2022, and a lot of these companies that were mentioned just a little bit ago, they are asking their employees to locate into Topeka. I'm not hearing that tonight from the city. I'm hearing, let's just not do that. I want to take a point that the previous lawyer said. Public and private entities are different. You definitely have a difference. You have a desire to make sure your citizens are safe. 15 years ago, when I lived in the neighborhood I'm in now, which is still a nice neighborhood, I wish we had code enforcement, but 15 years ago we did. And we had 3 police officers living within a block of me. One of them lived behind me. It was a very safe neighborhood. So what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing down the road, you're going to have police cars in Lawrence, police cars in other cities, going home, wearing our cars out. We're going to have to come back and get tax hikes to pay for the cars, the tires that are wearing out because they're going home at night. Where right now they can only go to Shawnee County. Where are they going to go in the future? Perhaps this police chief will stop that, but what about future police chiefs? When you craft these things, you have to craft them for the future. You have to realize that if you're going to do an employment policy change and put it in an employee handbook, it better be standardized. I've done employment cases. I consider this document very poorly drafted for many reasons. But the first thing that strikes me is, why didn't you go to the bargaining units and let them bargain? Why did they not give us something back? I heard this attorney representing the water union. Okay, let's talk about the water union. They don't want a second shift. I'm told it's because they like all the overtime, which is costing our taxpayers and ratepayers more money. So why not use this as a bargaining chip? You want this? What will you give us? Negotiation is a very simple art, but you have to do the negotiation. You can't just show up and not negotiate. you've got to consider what's in the best interest of the city. I didn't say just the citizens. I said the city as an organization. Now, to the statement that we evidently don't have the talent to do these jobs in Shawnee County, I consider that insulting. We have a lot of talented people in this community that can do lawyer jobs, can do judge jobs, can do all of these jobs that are down here. I think the part that strikes me the most, that I had the biggest concern with, was why was this not just limited to the bargaining units? Why did you throw in all the staff? Department heads? Lawyers? Professionals? Are you kidding me? So now they can live in Holton, they can live in Lawrence, they can live in Juneau, Alaska? I mean, I could see people telecommuting in. I mean, I really, honest to God, don't think this is well thought through. I wish you'd had maybe some people, some lawyers drafting this. I was told tonight I could talk to the city attorney sometime in the next week. We'll talk, I'll discuss, I'll point some things out. And I have handled employment cases, but I would not put this language into any, this red lines, that part, that section, I wouldn't put that in an employee handbook. I'm gonna ask for 2 more minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion for extension. And
Second.
By Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilmember Jensen. We proceed with voting.
We have 8 yes.
Just a couple things that I see that jump out at me. Reporting stations. Well, the fire department has 12 of those, at least. Where are all the reporting stations? Have you thought that through? 30 minutes from which reporting station? Okay, if the fireman's on the east side, but he lives way out west, under this current policy, he'd be fine if he's in Shawnee County. Under a 30-minute standard, he might not be able to make it. He may have to shift fire stations, but he may not have the seniority to move to another fire station. I don't think this has been thought through. Extensions, what is the, that standard? I need to see a written standard. What is that request about? What is good cause? I need to see definitions when you're doing these kinds of things. They need to be crafted right. I mean, if you don't want them thrown out down the road in 2 years because they were unable to enforce them. Or you may have department heads that just throw their hands up and say, I don't want to enforce it, I'm done. Well, the current chief may enforce it. The next chief may not. What you're doing is you're putting authority into the hands of people instead of the council telling them what to do. You're making all kinds of ways for people to wiggle around this and either not enforce it because they're not interested, or just send it down the road. I'm not going to do it. Who's going to judge what the 30-minute standard is? That needs to be quantified in this document. But overall, I'm absolutely against the non-bargaining units being involved in this. That includes your department heads. I do not think this should be changed for them. They need to live in Shawnee County as a minimum. It'd be nice if they'd be citizens of this city. Maybe we'd have, better services. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Again, a reminder, this is just a discussion item. At this point in time, we have a person, Councilwoman Ortiz.
The person? Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. This has been brought up before, and what I hear is Topeka is good enough, or the city of Topeka is good enough to work, but not live in the city of Topeka. And that kind of saddens my heart. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of texts, and that's okay, and a lot of phone calls. I have seen department heads accept positions, move across the street, and and they didn't get the job because they didn't want to move across the street, but they knew that when they took that. I have seen a city manager that didn't get it because he didn't live in the city. I have seen, these are all true stories, because as a council, we said, no, we wanted him in the city. So he didn't get it. I have seen a police chief in his contract, he got to drive his car, and guess what? He was way down in Fort Scott, Dodge City, refereeing a game. Yeah, citizens were outraged because he could take his vehicle out of the city. And we had to continue to work on his contract until he came to live here because he didn't want to live here. He wanted to live in Kansas City. And he said, oh, I can catch a flight. If there's an emergency, I can get on a helicopter. I could speed down the highway. I could do all. No, we need them here. We need them here. Citizens of Topeka pay that's who pays our salary. And they expect us to be here. They expect us to work here. They expect us, like a city manager we had, and they expected him to buy a house, and he didn't. He didn't. They were outraged. The whole time he was here, they talked about where he lived. I get so many calls. He's living here. He's renting here. He sent his wife back. He's got luggage going on the plane. We're watching him. He's taking money out the bank. They were outraged because of the salary that we said to get good qualifying people to work here, we had to pay him that, but yet they felt he was not pouring back in the community. This council has continuously given raises to the citizens, to our employees. State employees aren't getting raises. We might now, we went for 10 years. And so when I look at that, and the gentleman said, well, the private sector, taxpayers don't pay their money. We do. Taxpayers pay our city employees. That's why they're hostile when they see somebody at the side of the road. That's why they're hostile when they see somebody that's not doing their job or it takes 10 men to fill a pothole. That's why they're hostile. I cannot support this. I will not support this. I would like to leave it as it is. I think it's very crucial that we continue. And it's kind of heart-wrenching because the city manager was so excited that he has found somebody somebody that's coming in our fiscal, or not our fiscal, in our finance department that's moving here. And she's from where?
New York.
New York. Yeah, we're getting people here from different cities. We're getting excited about what we're doing downtown, but we're saying, come and work for us, and you don't have to live here. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me when we're trying to expand and we're trying to grow and we're trying to get excited, And we even had a city manager that came to me several times and said, I know I work for you. Would you approve of me just, living out of state and working for you? Heck no. And that's the kind of things that drive people crazy. So Karen, you didn't get the buzz the first meeting. I don't know what you got the second meeting. Is Gary start buzzing. I don't care what bargaining units agree with it. When I look at the bargaining units and I look at the police and I think the recruitment is better, we're not finding people that are not passing those tests, the math test, when they looked at it. And we really dug into that. We've got a different set of firefighters. Our older firefighters were committed. I'm starting to see that, not so much anymore. And they were committed to their jobs. They wanted to be, it was more family oriented. And I see some of that just kind of dwindling away there, kind of moving away. We've gotten away from that. I am proud of our employees that live here, because if they didn't live here, they're not going to invest here. They're not going to be, that's how you get people to invest in your community, is have them live there. And if they don't live there, they're not going to invest there. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ortiz. I will say a few remarks as well. I appreciate, and this has been a discussion that I've actually had with the unions as well with regards to would you support a residency expansion, and I said initially no. And the reason why is, like, one of the things that we have been discussing, even in the economic development arena, we've been asked when we are providing incentives to our employers and people that are bringing individuals to our community, are we considering ensuring that those individuals are going to live in our city? We're talking about that at the economic development sector. And then as public employees, I wouldn't have the honor of being your mayor if I didn't live here. And I have that privilege of living in this city that I love. And because I live in this city and I love this city, I have the ability then to be a participant in that. And I think that that's one of the things that separates a public servant, which civil service falls in the same category. These are individuals who are contributing to the ecosystem of our community. And it's wonderful. You know, like the other night, I went to drop off my daughter. It was 10 o'clock at night. We were doing groceries, and she wanted to get her Valentine's Day candy. What ended up happening, I ended up having a conversation with somebody that is from our community that was interested in hearing from the things that were happening in our community, and most importantly, interested in engaging into our community. Major businesses, if we want to talk about the private sector, are looking into buy local programs. Why? Because they understand the importance of contributing back to the communities that they are generating their businesses from. So at this point in time, I really appreciate the foresight and the leadership in saying, hey, should we consider this? Because it should always be a question that we ask. And it's not about, and I understand the perspective of saying, we want to have people having the liberty of choosing Topeka. Absolutely. I absolutely understand that. But it wasn't more than a year and a half ago when we were in the interview process for city manager, and one of the major concerns that we heard over and over from all of our constituents was we want to have somebody that's living here. All of us heard that from all of our constituents. So I just want to remind all of us that absolutely I understand. And maybe if we're doing recruitment for positions, we've always been able to grant exceptions when exceptions are needed. That's not something that is foreign to us. But the question is, are we as a community investing in employees that are married to our mission? What's our mission? We are the city of Topeka. If I am choosing to work in the city of Topeka, that means that I am invested in that mission. Those are just my initial remarks initially from the discussion. I'm looking forward to hearing more discussion, and like I think that very much like Councilwoman Ortiz is saying, I think that after tonight, typically when things are showed up in the meeting, they end up really starting to buzz into our ears because people are watching and they're going to provide feedback. And again, I really appreciate the foresight of the body and what people are looking into. But our mission is to serve the city of Topeka. Our citizens are paying every single one of our employments. And I feel that there is a duty of loyalty and a duty of care back to our community when it comes for us being stewards of those resources. Councilwoman Clear.
As someone that worked outside of the city for 15 years and traveled miles to another city, I was invested in that city as I was in this city because they had events. I mean, as I was a teacher, I went to their events, I went to their parades. I bought my gas here, I shopped here, but I still was vested in their community. My question is, if we have all these qualified people here as police officers and firefighters, where are they? Why are they not applying? You only have this big a pool and for jobs. If there's nobody in this pool, what are you going to do? You can't not fill the jobs. You have to go outside in a larger pool. And the thing is, had my job required me to move, I couldn't sell my house and uproot 8 kids and move. I mean, that wasn't, not that I wouldn't have wanted to, I mean, but it just wouldn't be possible. for me to do that. And I think a lot of people, even in Lawrence, that see some positions open here say, dang, I wish I didn't have to live there. I'm perfect for that job. And here we got directors here going, dang, I wish we could find someone perfect for that job. You know, and I think we're really stifling ourselves. And when people come in and work here, even if they don't live here, they eat lunch here. They shop on their lunches. They may bring they'll hear things happening downtown. They'll bring their kids back and attend that. I don't think they just leave, go home, and disregard the city. I think about vehicles. I have heard other police departments that, yes, you can take the car 30 minutes out, leave it, and find another way home if you've got an hour and a half to go. So we can always do that. They don't have to take their cars home. I mean, I think there's ways around the vehicle issue. And I don't want them to be married to our mission. I want them to be married to their job. I want them to and I really agreed with the attorney that said they do their job, they provide this city with their qualifications, with their intelligence, with their, with doing their job. And I think that's just as important. So, I mean, what do you do? Just leave the job open? I just think we need to cast our net a little larger. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is tough. This is tough. Before I start with some of my comments and observations, I do have a question, whether for the committee can answer or maybe one of the staff. How long has the city policy been that you must live in the city or Shawnee County? How long has that policy been in place?
I'm not sure right offhand. I'd have to look, or if Catherine knows. I don't know for sure. And it was changed, at one point it was changed from City of Topeka to Shawnee County. That was more recent, but I don't remember when it started.
I mean, I don't know if we're talking 10 years, 20 years, roughly. I'm not going to hold you to the number you tell me.
I think it's about 1981.
About 1981.
That some type of residency requirement existed. And then we used to be city limits, then it went to Shawnee County. I didn't get all that specific information.
Thank you. Thank you. As I said, this is difficult. So I'm glad it's a discussion item because I want to do some more due diligence on this. But we're in a different world than 1981. A lot more dual income families. A lot more telecommuting by employees, which also affects the pool. And I do know for a fact, if we're running, the last number I had was a 3.4% unemployment rate for the city, which basically 3% is unemployable anyway. So that creates a problem. And I know that my conversations with the fire department as well as the police department, I know they are struggling to get applicants. That being said, a couple observations that shows why I struggle on this topic is one comment was made in regards to the importance of some of our first responders, living in the city or not living in the city, and it was said, and I do agree, no one's asking what city do you live in when they're coming to help them. But if something happens at my house and that individual is living in Lawrence he's not going to be next door to help me as my neighbor who also happens to be trained to do those type of things. And so, that's just an observation that I have. The other piece of that is I'd like to see some more work done, either by the committee or by staff in regards to, and even Councilman Padilla can speak to this. I remember and understand part of the reason too that police officers took their cars home was it also was to show the community in regards to safety where they lived. It was kind of a deterrent. It was all those types of things. And I want to continue to do that, but if we do move forward with this, I don't want, I don't think it's logical to be putting, mileage, gas, all those different things in regards to the city vehicles to go to Holton, to go to wherever it is. So I would like, if we are going to move forward, we need to have addressed that as part of the plan. And then the other thing I have is kind of a question, and that question is there a way that we would be able to, avoid any type of employment practices, discrimination that there could be when hiring individuals? There is a weighting factor in regards to an individual who does live within the city or the county versus one who does not. I don't know the answer to that. I'm trying to, as I said, evaluate all these different perspectives because I do understand that, it's our responsibility to make people want to live in Topeka, make people say, hey, I want to be here. But at the same time, I think it's important that we're also able to recruit the brightest and the best. And sometimes circumstances prevent those individuals from actually being in Shawnee County or the city of Topeka. Thank you.
Councilman Padilla had pinged me, then you would go, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. This is something that I had a lot of interest in, and thank you, Councilwoman Hiller, for allowing me to come and visit. I do have a lot of history with this. As a city employee for 34 years, the city of Topeka, when I hired on, myself and my colleagues, we talked about a lot of things on the job, about the work itself, about the neighborhoods, people we interacted with. It's hard for me to remember if ever we talked about having to live in the city of Topeka. For us, it was a given. We were city employees, and this is where we were going to choose to work and live and raise our families. As time went on, when that changed, again, I think the history geek there said it was in 1980 or 81, with your thumbs up, and went to the Shawnee County. The conversation started to talk about, well, now that I can do that, maybe I'll move into Shawnee County. But in both of those cases, especially the one with Shawnee County, what I started to see was creep. I started to see people disregard their commitment to the employer by, I want to say tricks, where they established a residence somewhere, by mail, but they lived elsewhere. And so, in my opinion, they were violating the terms of their condition of employment. But it was allowed, and why it was allowed, I have no answer for. I don't know that it was disruptive to the services that we received. I think it was dishonest to do that. If you're going to do it, come and talk to the chief and the fire department or the police department and talk to them about it and get it up front. So in a sense, I wonder if some of this initiative is trying to make up for that, for those employees who never took the time to discuss it openly and made the move, and now they don't have to worry about it if this gets passed. But my biggest thing that I'm hearing tonight, I mean, I understand everybody has their reasons for wanting to live in Shawnee County or the next county over. The words that I heard tonight that struck me wrong, and was from the attorney for the FOP and the firefighters. And I say this because I'm sure he represents them, but he doesn't do the job. He doesn't do the job of a firefighter or a policeman. And the comments all imply that we have no talent in this city or county to fill the jobs that we have. We have to bring other people in to do the job. And I think that's wrong. I think that tells a lot of our youth in high school, college, technical schools, that they have to look elsewhere because we as a body or as employers are looking past them. We're looking to bring in other people because we assume, like I always used to hear in training classes, that the guy that comes in with a briefcase from out of town is the expert, that he knows more than anybody that's living here. And that's what I'm hearing tonight. It's not that so much the distance or whether or not we should have the right to live where we want to live. We all want that. What I'm hearing is we're discounting the people that we have in this community to fill the jobs. And I know that I've heard we're having trouble doing this, we're having trouble doing that. I know the police department especially, because I've visited with Sergeant Campos about the things the police department is doing to bring other candidates to the Topeka Police Department, a diverse group. And that's good, that's excellent. The fire department, I think, is making the same efforts. But what efforts are we doing in Topeka to find that same talent? I know we can't just throw our hands up and say that there's nobody in this city or county that can fill the job of fireman or policeman or director or anything like that. We have to do a better job of cultivating the talent that we have in this community already. I'm not saying turn our backs on those people that could come to our community, but let's look internally as well. It's almost like saying, even those who have the job already, you got it, but maybe you weren't qualified because you didn't come from out of town. I think that's an insult to the employees that we have employed now, and I think it's a deterrent to our citizens who want to become employees of the city of Topeka. So whatever you decide, however it's drafted, I want to hear the conversation changed to not about where I live, but what do we have as resources in our Topeka community and in Shawnee County to fill the jobs that we're all discussing right now. We have to look internally and give people hope in this community that they can find a job here and not have to look to move elsewhere like the others are. We're trying to get them to move here. That's the conversation I heard tonight that really took me aback, because I hadn't heard it so much used in that context. It was more about response time and the ability to live where I want to live and dual income families. But when the lawyers started to speak about we can't find the people qualified to come here in this community, we have to bring in other people, that really is a strike at our community for what we're trying to do in trying to develop our in-town, in-community talent. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. This really hurts my heart. This is counterintuitive to what we've spent nearly a decade trying to do in Topeka. I understand there are extenuating circumstances, that would require people not live here for various things. Maybe you have an illness that requires you to be closer to KU Med or something like that. So, I recognize that we can't deploy a one-size-fits-all solution here, but this just really is counterintuitive to everything our community has worked for. we're basically giving up on the talent pool we have here, and I'm, at least initially not okay with it. Now, as always, I'm open to having my mind changed with, facts and information, but as I sit here now, I'm really struggling with this. If we have to make a change, one thing I would consider is, if you really don't want to live in our community, how much is that worth to you? Would you turn 15 or 20% of your salary back in for the opportunity to not live in Shawnee County? We talk about if this is not going to be your community, that's fine. When we would ask you to invest in it anyway through a smaller salary. Just an option, open for discussion. But gosh, 10 years ago, I looked real seriously at whether or not Topeka was the right community for me. And at the time, I thought it wasn't. We had a downtown that was not in good shape. We had a community that didn't seem to really know what it was doing. And then that turned around. And it turned around because people in this community stood up and said, we're going to turn Topeka into something. And my gosh, look at what we've done. I have a business here. My wife has a business here. We're committed to this town. Because we want to be here, because we like Topeka, and telling our citizens that we can't find the people here to help continue building that dream, I really struggle with that. Thank you.
Thank you. So have you been looking, I've been like on my phone desperately looking for numbers and for data. So let's say that we were to talk about the state of Kansas, and let's say that we're having a struggle in the city of Topeka to find employees. According to statistics, the state of Kansas has a 3.4% unemployment. So therefore, that means that if we were going to look at a city next to us, they're probably going to have the same or lower unemployment rate, which means that most people in the workforce are tapped, which means that the same type of cannibalism that we would be doing by trying to seek employees in our community is going to be happening outside of our community as well, because the same communities that surround us are having the same problem. Topeka, fortunately, has a 3.6% unemployment rate, which is not a significant departure, but it's still, we're in a much better position, which means that maybe potentially there's a 2% more individuals that you could just, attract from. But let's say that we're going to go to Missouri and look outside of the state to look for people, which we know won't happen. There is a 3.5% unemployment in Missouri. There is a 2.9% unemployment in Nebraska, and there is a 3.9% unemployment in Oklahoma. Those are all the areas that are surrounding us. Let's talk a little bit more about the other big issue that's happening that we're not talking about. When you look at the boomer generation that is entering retirement, typically 50% of all employees are going to be eligible to retire within 10 years for many organizations, which means that the situation that we are having right now is being had everywhere. Furthermore, when I was looking in my little prompt research, I found that Police One cited, it's an online website for police officers, on October 1st, 2018, number of law enforcement officers decreasing. We are in a crisis. We need more law enforcement officers, and that's national. In addition to that, I took a look at what is the demand for firefighters. And because of the same changes that I'm talking about in the labor market, it says that in 2016 to 2026, there is going to be a 7% higher demand for firefighters, again, because our forces are retiring. What the private sector is doing to remediate this is not trying to go to another community to look for people. It's understanding that we live in a time that we're in a war for talent. And a war for talent means that we have to grow our own, which is why we have programs in the city of Topeka right now as Together Topeka, which we're working with schools, we're working with Washburn Tech to develop that talent locally. The other thing that we have to talk about is the fact that maybe what we've done is that we have forgotten the underemployed people in our community that are not being represented here because maybe they don't know and they've given up on the labor market. And we have to figure out ways of developing the skills that we need in our community, which is the really hard, long time job that not only we as the city of Topeka have to do, but everybody is doing all around the nation. The challenge that I want to present to all of us is the workforce challenges that you are all presenting are absolutely valid. I see them. I absolutely see them. And I honor them. I know I don't want any more for our firefighters to be short people. I don't want our police officers to be short people. That's not what's in my heart. But what I do want is for us to be able to bring up the proper people in our community that need those jobs and work on developing that talent, because that's the only way that we're going to remedy this. Our whole nation is struggling right now with an unemployment deficit. So as we look at this, and no matter how many cities I've been going to, everybody says the same thing. We're having the same issues. We're having the same issues. We're having the same issues. It's not just a Topeka issue. I think it is time for us to really start digging in and working with our constituency, developing that workforce from our constituency, working on our cradle to career programs that we have going on, supporting them and growing our own people and supporting our own community in the process. Councilwoman Claire.
I want us to remember it's not one or the other. It's not everybody's going to be hired from outside of Topeka. I mean, you do both. You cultivate, you grow the talent, great, but what if there isn't any? That's when you can go out. I don't think, you don't have to look at one or the other, inside, outside, but we need to have that option of going out if we have to.
City Manager.
This has been hard. Listening to your positions relative to this. First thing I want to clear up so that the chief, we have a requirement that take-home cars do not leave the county. All right, that's already a requirement. We analyze which people, the chief grants authority as to who can take the cars home or who can't. So that clear up that. We do local recruitment. And to insinuate that we're not trying to recruit local people here, I don't want to go there, because we do. And you look at the various programs we have, we're trying to recruit local people. And we do end up with people in these positions that are from Topeka. I look at the programs such as the chief's got with the Explorers program for the police department. There's over 40, 50, chief? 40 that are in that program. And we're growing our own in that department. And I bet most of those people will have an interest in law enforcement, and a good number of them will probably come to work for us someday. We're doing those things. We're doing the right things within the community to make people want to live here. And I don't understand why we want to talk about making them live here. They should want to live here. I wanted to live here. Many of the people that we have coming here want to live here. And I will always encourage an employee that comes to work for the city of Topeka to live in the city of Topeka. But I'm also not about making them live somewhere they don't want to live. So we're going to make that happen where people want to live here. So I understand your positions, and I've heard them, but I also feel that in an environment we live in where we have engineering positions that have stayed open almost 2 years because we can't find a qualified person, and we have some of those same people that are interested in the job but don't want to live in our community. So we continue to go without staff that we need in order to do our job. And so that's why we want to look at this. So I appreciate the conversation, but it is something that we have to give serious consideration to, in my opinion.
Councilwoman Hiller?
I wanted to throw a couple more things that were discussed in our committee, just so they're on the table. One is that there's a little discussion about the city manager, and that position is contracted, has traditionally been contracted, and the councils so far under that form of government have always chosen to require that the city manager live in the city limits. So that, in your consideration, is outside the big pool that the personnel ordinance would apply to. Some of the other, I too walked into that with really mixed feelings. Some of the other things that were discussed, someone touched on millennials, for instance. Millennials are looking for choice. The way people do their jobs is different. So the working virtually anywhere in the country, people are choosing where they want to live, and they may not work in that community at all. As the city manager said, Topeka is competing to be that place people want to live, no matter what their income is or if they're retired. So part of our challenge is to separate those two, perhaps. The issue of wanting people to live here. Some of the examples in terms of affirmative hiring given were that, for instance, the staff has recruited at Haskell to get Native Americans. We have a reasonable-sized Native American population here. That's a logical place to recruit. Their experience so far has been that they have found viable candidates that were mutually interested, but those candidates had a community where they lived and didn't want to move. They weren't far away, but they did not want to move to Topeka. It wasn't an anti-Topeka thing, as far as I know. It was that they were established somewhere else. Another example came up, I think the police department in particular has been recruiting at Fort Riley. You have now two spousal situations where both spouses were in the military. One's getting out, the other one's still in. That one who's getting out is a viable candidate to come to Topeka, but they're not ready to move the family here because the other, the family is rooted at Fort Riley at least for the next couple of years, and the services and support that are there for a military family. That has cost us some folks. Those arguments made an impact on me. At the same time, we challenged about the issue of the engineers, the long time hiring. Had we changed our recruitment practices? Well, no. Had we gone, for instance, to historically black colleges to recruit minorities? Some of the discussion about that was you want to make sure that you've affirmatively recruited to the point where you've got 2 or 3 finalists that make that whole choice a little more diverse. As we discussed in the committee, there's probably some room for us to be more creative about that affirmative hiring. Often, at least the reports were, if we've recruited somebody from way out of town to come, they do live in Topeka. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. So just wanted, the other thing is that we are involved as a city in being more regional than we were in the past. We've realized that for economic development, for instance, being part of METAL, the coalition of Manhattan and Lawrence and Emporia and Topeka, we have seen as being to our economic benefit. We also are the city in a metropolitan region that, depending on how you want to define it, easily is 50-mile radius of lots of smaller, more rural communities. If we are that regional center, most of the private businesses have people that come in from small towns or from farms that work in Topeka. We're losing the opportunity to hire those folks who are in our metropolitan area if we say you need to move from Osage City to Topeka just to work here during the day. Those were just some of the conversations, and I wanted to share those for your consideration. Thank you.
All right, this was a healthy discussion item. And with that, we are done with the items in the agenda, and we move on to announcements. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The only item I have is to remind you that, and the public, that there is a sign code meeting, 2 meetings, February 26th, both at 1 o'clock and 6 o'clock at the Topeka Shawnee County Library. They will discuss going through the proposed code ordinance changes for signs, and if anyone has an interest, it's a pretty substantial change, and so some people should take an interest. That's all I have.
February is Black History Month, and I've been talking about getting to know a little bit more about our history and our country. I made a point today of going to Dean Carla Pratt's class at Washburn Law, and it was a very painful experience as I learned about, not in a bad way actually, I have somebody here laughing like, aha. I learned about different things that were done via law to not only prohibit individuals from being married based on color, but also how different races in our country were encouraged to marry so that they can perpetuate a color of a skin rather than allowing for plurality to exist by individuals just being counted as equal. I learned also that I always talk about the Constitution and having 3/5 of a person being other people, which meant our African American counterparts. And I was taught today that the reason that that was done was not only because they were not considered whole individuals, but it was most importantly so that people could actually not limit the amount of votes that individuals that were slave owners could have. And that way the free states were not completely affected by that as well. It's a very interesting history that we have in our country. And one of the things that I was talking to my daughters about is the fact that we often, because of the way that our history books are written, kind of like don't look at all of those factors. And sometimes we end up wondering why things are happening the way that they are happening without trying to really go into the very painful experiences like I had to do today. And those students did also as well. I was really proud to see that Washburn had a professor that was just like really digging into our history to helping understand those things. And the reason that I bring this up is because I think that it is only when we are able to understand our history and understand the roots of why those things are happening that we can change it. And we are like in a generation of people that are really interested in learning more and changing things so that all of us have equal rights in our nation and have opportunities. And I know that this probably is a very uncomfortable thing for the mayor to be talking about in the announcements, but I just think that if we don't have difficult conversations, then we don't move the needle. So, Councilman Lesser, Councilwoman Hiller, Councilwoman Claire, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Henderson's gonna give my announcement.
Councilman Emerson.
Yes, Ms. Ortiz wrote that I'm Topeka proud. I think I am too, and Scotsman as well. So.
I shall not be moved.
So, yeah, thank you. Be safe out there. I think it's snowing pretty good.
Councilman Padilla, Councilman Jensen.
Hunter's doing great, still no sleep. Drive safe, everybody.
Councilman Mays, Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say something. I'd like to be the first council person to invite Amazon to look at Topeka. We have great schools. We have excellent access to the highway system. We're a gigabit city. Our downtown is coming alive. We have new trendy shopping districts that are being built. So come take a look at Topeka, and we've got some land I'm sure we'd love to talk to you about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Cohen. We have two individuals signed up for public comment. Joe Ledbetter left. So we have Mr. Claude Belshi. Thank you for your grace in allowing me to move you to this part of the meeting.
I had no intention of speaking on the residency, but everybody else did. I might as well too. The firemen work. They're 4 minute. They're get dressed and slide down the pole. They're on the job no matter what. Whereas a police officer is a different situation entirely. From 95 to 2005, a little longer than that, I worked with several Topeka police officers and went to their private homes, which was usually a different mailing address than what the city had. The city had the address of their rental property, which was within the city limits, and I went to the various counties around Topeka to deliver their equipment to them there. Yeah. Anyway, Brent Trout, I'm sorry, city manager, Mr. Trout, has an opening for an employee. I'd like to see the old man that left in the blue shirt with the gray beard. I'd like to see somebody like that fill your position. He's not afraid to speak his mind. I would like to see somebody with no police experience because it somewhat makes them impartial, or makes them partial. I don't see where a college education helps what you need at all. Yes, they do need a little police knowledge, they need a little legal knowledge, I'm not denying that. But what they really need is impartialness. They need somebody that's not afraid to tell you, hey, Brent, you're wrong, or Cochran, you're wrong. whoever does get hired, and I do believe that who gets hired for that position should be required to be from or live in the city of Topeka. An outsider has no idea what a third shift Central Topeka police officer deals with. Madam Mayor, you make it very clear that Topeka is a totally different city than most your cities with our mental illness issues within the city. Okay, so I am a strong believer that at least for your position that you're looking at, that they be somebody familiar with the city. That's about it on that. Why I am really here, and I will need another minute, why I am here. Topeka offers, I picked this one up right outside the door here. Emergency repair program for low income. Fill out the application, owner occupied, blah, blah, blah. You can guys all read it, not a big deal. The program is for furnace replacement, sewer line collapse, water heater replacement, significant water line, waste line, gas line leakage, medical required, documented mechanical systems, and roof replacement. Okay, furnace replacement is actually what I'm talking about right this minute. I have filled out this application. I have an email that I could show proof of, pretty easy, that says that everything is, that they have all the information they need, and that we're down to around 5 weeks. Okay, hang on. Didn't the front of this say emergency?
Sir, you've run out of time. You said you needed an extension. Would you like a minute or 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? We have a motion to accept for 2 minutes, second by Councilmember Cohen. We proceed with voting. I thought you were.
The name of the program
just a
is
second, sir.
emergency.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voting yes,
Okay.
the motion passes. You may continue,
sorry.
sir.
The name of the program is emergency. If you go home tonight and your home is 34 degrees or 32 degrees or whatever the temperature is outside, and you are on a limited income, so you contact the city regarding emergency, it says repair, it's actually replaced, but emergency replacement to help the low income. It's a wonderful program. And it'll work great 7 weeks from now. Using their own numbers, sitting there with the gentleman today, with Steve, I believe it was today. The lowest, the first time we counted, week to get it, week to get it off the top, to the top of his stack, a week for him to look at it, 2 weeks for so-and-so to look at it, a week for the inspector to come look at it. I missed a week there. That's before it goes out for bid. So now we got contractors, how long we want to give them, So this pamphlet here is very misleading. If it is emergency, like a furnace would be, there has to be a way of speeding that process up. Within 7 weeks, the house is left vacated, and with Topeka's crime problem has probably been broke in and all the copper stole out of it because the homeowner is unable to live in that property. They end up at the Mission or a friend's house or whatever the case may be. But either throw the pamphlet away or make it to where there's some truth to what it says.
Thank you for your comments. Is it possible for us to just have a set aside once the meeting is done we will have a conversation with you once the meeting is done to discuss your particular situation.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That being said, there is no further public comments. There is no executive sessions this evening. I have been told that it's snowing pretty interesting outside, so this meeting is adjourned. Please drive safely, Topeka.